Welcome to the Mick, a Mook, and a Mike. Hosted by four-time Emmy-nominated producer Frank Mace and retired New York City firefighter, 9/11 first responder, and Vietnam vet, Billy O'Connor.
Today's guest, celebrity chef Eddie Herbert.
My brother Frankie, how you doing, pal? We're on the same side of the pond today. What's going on?
I don't know.
We used to have a guest inside the studio.
Well, we'll see shortly. It'll be a surprise to you if we don't have a guest here.
You think it's just going to be a summer fling and you're going to hang around for the winter? Or what? What's the story? We're getting awful close together.
I think I'll hang around for the winter.
I don't get a lot of repeat action. I want to warn you up front.
Why not?
Huh? I must be a lousy jump. I don't know.
You're a lousy jump, okay? What are you looking at Derek
Because
for?
Derek is a friend of mine. I like to look at Derek.
Why are you looking at Derek all the time?
For approval.
Oh, well.
I want to make sure I don't say anything racist. He accuses me of being a racist all the time. I want him to be assured that I hate everybody equally. I'm not a racist.
Derek, are you on camera?
Yes.
Okay, because if you haven't been, hi.
Hi, everybody.
All right, that's enough.
You had enough of this banter.
That's enough of this
petty banter.
We got celebrity chef Eddie Herbert
Oh, wow.
with us today in studio.
Now we're talking.
How you doing, chef?
I'm doing great. Fabulous. What's happening?
Chef Eddie or Eddie, do you like Chef or you like Eddie?
Eddie.
Eddie will do it, huh?
Eddie's good.
I like it.
Yeah.
You guys have got some
We got
common
a little bit of
common
stuff in
ancestry.
common.
Why don't you tell Eddie about
Well, I tell you, Eddie, I had a couple of restaurants in my day, bar restaurants, mostly focused on the bar area, being Irish and everything, but I had a couple of restaurants, and it's a tough gig, man.
It's fun, though, right?
Yeah, it's got to be the toughest gig in the world, I think, for me. And also, I went to New Orleans in 1970 when I came back from Vietnam. I went there for 2 weeks
Right.
and stayed 2.5 years. Just couldn't get out of town. I mean, I started tending bar at Pat O'Brien's and Johnny White's across the street. I know,
Johnny White's.
you familiar with Johnny's?
Wow.
Yeah,
Johnny White's stayed open till Katrina.
Yeah, Johnny White's. That was a great saloon. I mean, I used to work at Pat's and drink at Johnny's, and I knew Johnny. Before he died, I think he was a halfback at LSU.
who did you know after they died?
Nobody.
Okay.
Except yourself. Take care of yourself.
Continue.
And Pat O'Brien's, just, what bar did you?
Oh yeah, well, at Pat's it's like a factory, so they start you at the waiter's bar in the back, the service bar.
Right.
And what they do is they have a guy just pushing hurricanes,
Right.
and opening beers, and the guy behind the register, like a waiter, will come up and say, "I want 2 breezes, 2 hurricanes, 2 rum and cokes, a scotch and soda," and you're just standing there pouring like this. And if you don't know the drink, the guy in the register goes, "Okay, hurricane, take 3 shots of rum, take a shot of grenadine, take this." So you learn all the drinks. Then when you get good enough, they move you to the sidebar.
When you walk in, the bar to the left?
That's the main bar. You got to work your way up to the main bar.
That's where locals go. That's
Yeah,
where,
exactly.
Like if I want to drink there.
Right. You're not going to the piano bar. You're not going to the patio bar. Yeah. But Pat O'Brien's in them days, and I'm talking 1971, they were doing $8 million a year, from what I understand, the gross, without selling a hamburger. I mean, they had no food at the time.
They didn't have food.
They gave away popcorn to make it thirstier.
I have a friend that got married there. There's a place upstairs, and he got married at Pat O'Brien.
Well, let's go back because you're from New Orleans, correct?
Yes.
You went to high school in New Orleans?
I was born and raised. I was born at the Public Health Hospital on Chapatula Street.
Chapatula.
My father had just gotten out of the Navy. He's from New Orleans. My mom is from New Orleans.
And where'd you go to high school?
Well, I went to all of them. I started off at De La Salle High School, which is uptown on St. Charles Avenue. All boys, Catholic school.
So you got thrown out of that?
No, I never got thrown out of school. After a year at De La Salle, my parents thought perhaps might be a good idea to send him to boarding school. So then they shipped me across the lake to a boarding school called St. Paul's.
We're talking Lake Pontchartrain, right?
Across Lake Pontchartrain in a little town called Covington, which is like a big town now. Everybody's just moving out of New Orleans. But I went there for 2 years, and Then I went to another school after that for my senior year, a very small school in Destrehan, Louisiana, which is a little bit upriver from New Orleans. And I had maybe 38 kids in my class. And I think 3 or 4 of them were intellectually challenged, and that they were like 22 years old and they were still in high school, you know. But it was fun. All of those things were fun.
So how'd you get into the chef business?
After I went to, I guess it was after my sophomore year in college, I got a job in a restaurant. But the first time I worked around food, I was a little kid and I worked in a snowball stand. That was fun because food, as you know, you serve people and you make them happy. When I was in boarding school, I worked in the cafeteria as a server. And in the school, it was neat because there was a family, the Taylor family, and they ran the food service because it was a boarding school. They had to feed kids 3 meals a day. And they were Cajuns, and the food was delicious. And so I used to hang out in the kitchen because I was a server, and I got to know them, meet them. And
how would you describe Cajun food?
Unique.
Cajun food is a food of the land. The Cajuns typically, you know, historically worked the land. They were fishermen. They were farmers, and so the foods evolved from whatever they were growing and catching. Cajun food is rural, whereas Creole food you would consider it to be urban. It was sophisticated sauces. People ate in restaurants, you know, hollandaise, good stuff. Cajun, lots of rice. New Orleans, Louisiana was the #1 rice producer in America before we grabbed Hawaii. It was also the #1 grower of sugarcane before we grabbed Hawaii. So Cajun food has a lot of rice. It starts with rice. Gumbo has rice. Jambalaya has rice. Crawfish étouffée is served over rice. When I was in boarding school, it was nice because there were boys from all over the state, all over the world. We had kids from as far away as South Africa. We had a lot of Latin American kids at the school from Central America and the Caribbean. We had a number of Cajun boys there from all over Acadiana, which goes from, you know, Lafayette to Grand Isle. It's a big area. And so sometimes I got to go home with, you invited to go home to your friend's house. And I had a friend whose father and mother, whose mother and father, because she inherited the farm from her family, they lived on this rice farm outside of Abbeville, Louisiana, which is outside of Lafayette, Louisiana. They lived in Maurice, Louisiana, which was right by Mamou, Louisiana.
Familiar skyline, Mamou, Louisiana.
And so my friend Jim Baudouin, Maurice Baudouin, we called him Jim, was from Maurice, Louisiana. They lived on this rice farm. And when they didn't grow rice, they grew crawfish. And it was the most delicious crawfish étouffée over rice I ever had in my life, was the stuff that Mrs. Baudouin had made for us. It was great.
Didn't I remember you grew up with Rusty Russ, our old friend from way back, podcast past, William Rusty Russ.
When we grew up, our parents moved into this undeveloped area, which is now called River Ridge, which is like very developed. But when we moved there as kids, we moved there in 1959, and you know, the Russes probably moved there in 59 or 60. And down the street was the Gibbons. You know Denny Gibbons?
No.
Okay. An architect. A guy did work for Jay and stuff. We all grew up together.
Jay Thomas.
We all grew up together because it was just the Herberts, and then down the street was the Russes, and then down further was the Gibbons. The Russes had a ton of kids. My parents had 7. So the Russes had Rusty, and then Chris, who was a year older than me, then Kevin, who was my age, is my age. We went to kindergarten together. And then there was Karen, no,
Not important.
Laurie, who was Frank's age, my brother, and Karen and Kelly. And so wherever there was a Herbert, there was sort of a Russ.
Mhm.
And Mr. Russ was a military guy. I think he went to Annapolis. He was in the Navy for a long time, and he was tough as nails. And Mrs. Russ was a nurse in the Navy, and she was tough as nails too.
Your connection with Frank is initially through Jay Thomas, right? Jay Thomas. I know how Frank met Jay Thomas. How did you meet Jay? Did you grow up with Jay? And
No, I met Jay Thomas here. I moved to Los Angeles to fix a restaurant. This fella owned this restaurant called the Ritz Café. It was a Cajun Creole place
On Santa Monica Boulevard.
on Pico.
On Pico.
In between Beverly and Doheny. I was doing the Cajun Creole thing, and he had opened up a place here, and it did amazingly well, but he wasn't happy with the food.
wow.
So I was first hired as a consultant to come out here, and then I was asked to move here. So I did. And then right after that, around the same time, I got a phone call at work. Place was really busy too, and a lot of fun. So I get this phone call, and it's this fella, Jay Thomas. He says, I know friends of yours, you know, my brother, Tim, and some friends. We had mutual friends. He said, they told me I should get in touch with you. And I said, well, where are you? And he lived in West Hollywood at the time on Kings Road.
Mhm.
And he says, I'm in West Hollywood. I said, what are you doing now? He says, nothing. I said, well, come over here. I'll treat you to dinner and drinks. He was in like 10 seconds. And that's it. That's how we met.
That was 81 or 70,
No.
77?
No, 86. 86. I moved here in 86. Did I? I moved here in 86.
Okay. Well, okay.
Yeah, that's when I met him.
Wow.
I met him one time in New York City,
But it was.
but it was like for 10 seconds.
Yeah, because I. When were you at the Ritz Cafe? When were you at the
I
Ritz?
moved there in 1986. I moved here
Okay.
to do it in 86.
Okay, so that funny how your mind plays tricks on you. I thought you had known Jay before that, because then you opened your own place, the Lincoln Pay Cafe, in like 91, 92, something like that.
Something like that.
Those were the best times,
Yeah.
because everything is on the arm except for the booze.
We had a lot of fun.
You know, I that struck me when you said that. When I told you I was in the restaurant business, you said it's a lot of fun, ain't it?
Every night is a party. People come in, they're having a great time.
Yeah.
They're eating, they're drinking, they're talking to their friends. They might get laid later on, It's
Yeah.
fantastic. It's a blast. You don't
Yeah,
make
but-
any money,
Yeah, exactly.
but it's a lot of fun.
But in the bar business, you can have the same amount of fun and just put the booze back on the shelf. You don't got to worry about whether or not they ate it or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
What you guys, I mean, one of the things is you got to make sure that, catering, I would think, is a lot easier than running a restaurant.
You figure it out.
Yeah.
But let me go back to New Orleans. So you went to the Culinary Institute of Louisiana?
I went to the Culinary Institute of America,
Of America. Excuse me.
which is in Hyde Park, New York.
Hyde Park.
But then you
FDR.
went to culinary school in Louisiana also, or did I read?
No.
No. So how'd you get into that? Culinary School of America.
Well, I started. Let me start from the beginning.
Please.
I came home and I got a job as a busboy, you know, in a new place. And they were trying to make a go at it. And they hired, I was a busboy, and they hired these really pro waiters and this pro maitre d'. They pilfered them from the rib room in the French Quarter. And they made this place into a fancy joint. And so these pro waiters, they taught me how to be a waiter. I became an assistant waiter. I became a waiter. So then you learn how to flambe. You do table side. We wore tuxedos.
Oh.
Yeah, it was fancy. So I was working. One of the guys that worked there was this guy, Cookie. And Cookie left to go back to his regular restaurant job, which was in the French Quarter. And I ran into him one night in the French Quarter, and he says, "What are you doing?" I was at UNO at the time. I wasn't working in the restaurant. I was just going to school. And he says, "We need a waiter at the restaurant." So I went and I applied. It was a restaurant called the Vieux Carré, which was
Old place.
on the corner of Bourbon and Bienville, right in the French Quarter, right next to Gauloise.
Gauloise is still there. It's still thriving, right?
All of these places are still there. Arnaud's was next to us. And so I was going to school full time, and I was working full time in a tuxedo on Bourbon Street in it was a French restaurant, you know, Creole French. The menu was in French, and it was great. And it was the year that the Superdome had the first Super Bowl in it. So that was 74 or something.
Okay.
So I was working at the Vieux Carré, and it was a busy place. And it was right after the holidays, Thanksgiving, people having a great time, eating with the family, Christmas, same thing, eating out a lot, New Year's Eve. And then we had the bonus Super Bowl, right? So like it continued. And all of these people are in the French Quarter, and I'm looking around, the place is packed. Super Bowl's in a couple of days. And I'm waiting on Bob Cousy.
Oh, wow.
I went into the kitchen and I told the owner, I said, "I'm waiting on Bob Cousy out there." He says, "Who's Bob Cousy?" I told him he played for the Celtics, you know. I said, at the end of the meal, I said, "I think we should send him after dinner drinks." He sent them creme de menthe. So anyway, I'm standing in the dining room. I'm in a tuxedo, and I'm looking around. These people are having a fabulous time, and I'm looking at the other waiters, and they're having a great time because they're making money and they're making people happy. And I go into the kitchen, and the cooks are having a great time and cooking and stuff. And I thought to myself, I had this epiphany. I said, screw psychology, which I was pretending I was studying that in college. I said, screw that. I said, here, you can help somebody instantly for maybe 2 hours, you don't have to spend a lot of time in the office talking to them. So that was my last semester in college. And I started to be a waiter all over town. I worked at Commander's, I worked at Brennan's, I worked at Broussard's. I worked in the best places. And then I said, this isn't enough. I need to know more. And so I decided I wanted to,
So you went from New Orleans to the Culinary Institute.
In 1976, in the bicentennial year. Yes, I did. Yes.
Hyde Park, right? FDR country.
In the Vanderbilt Mansion. Yeah. Beautiful. Mid-Hudson Valley.
Yeah. I've been up there. It's beautiful.
Oh, man. Autumn.
Yeah.
It's Technicolor.
You bounced in a lot of places that I bounced. I noticed you did St. Martin's, too. I love St. Martin's. And
every year, after I got out of culinary, I didn't want to go back to New Orleans. I was like, well, I'm up here already. I'm going to go back to New Orleans for what? one of the reasons I went up there is because I wanted to get out of New Orleans, and I wanted to learn about other things other than Creole food, because I thought at the time that although it was delicious and wonderful and world famous, it was sort of like New Orleans jazz, which is wonderful and world famous, but it's sort of like it was sort of like Latin. Everything's based on it, but it was like a dead language. And I wanted to get out, and I wanted to go see, a better place than to go to New York. You don't have to go to Europe, It's right there. So after culinary, I took a job at a restaurant called Romeo Salta, which was Romeo Salta was the man who elevated Italian food in America. His first restaurant was in Los Angeles, and it was a restaurant called Chianti. Do you remember a restaurant called Chianti?
I know. I know the name. I can't say that I've ever been there, but
he opened it in like the late 20s, and I think they closed it in like the 80s. It was there forever. But after that, he moved to Manhattan and opened up.
And what was your position at Rome at the restaurant? Were you now a graduate of the Culinary Institute? So you weren't waitering. You were
I'm a
sous chef. Sous chef?
No,
head chef.
I'm a nothing. I'm an idiot that just got out of college. I knew when I was in school, I had a roommate named Joey Marcello, who was also from New Orleans, and we had a chef named Chef Marcello. So he thought that was great, and we became friends with Chef Marcello, who was also very close friends of Mr. Joe Amendola, who was the president of the school. So we became friendly with these people. It was just a nice friend to have, the president of the school. We go to their house and eat at Sunday. It was nice. So when it was time for me to get out of school, I went and made an appointment with Mr. Amendola, and I said, "Look, I don't want to work for the Marriott. Nothing wrong with it, but," he says, "What do you want?" I said, "I want to work in a nice Italian or French restaurant in Manhattan." He says, "Well, I'll see what I can do." I went back down to my class, and 15 minutes later, somebody came with one of those while you were out pink slips.
Yeah.
Mr. Amendola wants to see you. I went upstairs. He had a job for me at Romeo Salta's, right? Yeah. So I had an interview. And so I went, I graduated. My mom and daddy and my sister Renee came up. And then after it was over, we went to Manhattan and spent the rest of the weekend. And then they were going back to New Orleans. I brought a friend of mine with me, another classmate, guy from New Orleans, a guy named Anthony DiPiazza. We were in trouble up there with Marcella and DiPiazza and Herbert. Forget it. We ran the place. But anyway, Anthony came to Manhattan with my mother and father and my sister, and we spent the weekend. And we went out to eat at Romeo Salta, which was the place that I had an interview with. And it was spectacular. I was pretty excited about it. So then it was time for them to leave. My friend got back on the train, went back up to school. My parents went to New Orleans. And I checked into the Vanderbilt YMCA.
High roll.
I had $136, and I got a room at the YMCA, which was $9 a night. Nice, right? So I went for the job interview the next day, and I got the job. And so that's how I started.
So what job did you have?
Slave. I'd have to go to I had to go to work for lunch. I worked a split shift. Slave. I went for lunch. The chef was Giacomo Spada. Spada means spear. Sword, means sword. And that's what he did. He beat me with a sword all day long. He was fabulous.
Oh, wow.
He was fabulous. In the beginning, here's a guy that grew up in New Orleans, which is French Creole mostly. So then I went to the Culinary Institute of America, which is classical French, right?
Mhm.
And then I take a job in an Italian restaurant. Everybody speaks Italian except for me, you know. The odds were against me. But I let them beat me up. And I took it all. And then eventually they said, okay, let off, let off.
I got a
And they
couple.
loved me, they loved me. The first guy I worked with, they wanted to train me. Eduardo, Romeo Salta. Eduardo, I'm going to make you the best Italian chef in blah, blah, blah. So their idea for me was to learn all of the different stations. And then when people would go on vacation, I'd fill in. They trained me to be a journeyman, a tournade, a guy that could do it all. And the first person they put me with was a fellow named Gino Bertarelli. And Gino was a wonderful man. He worked the salad station, or the antipasta station, which was a huge station because it had so many things on it. Clams, oysters, antipastas, all of the cold stuff, all of the salads. It was a lot to do. So he trained me at first. And all the other guys were yelling at me. And he would say to me, he said, Eduardo, don't worry about them. They're not even Italians. I said, what do you mean? He says, they're Sicilians. So after Gino, they passed me on to Giovanni Patanza. And Giovanni Patanza was the pasta chef, and he made all of the sauces. This brown sauce, bechamel, marinara, tomato sauce, all the sauces he made. And he also made the fresh pastas like the gnocchi and the lasagnas and things like that. And here's a guy that worked with tomatoes all day long. And at the end of the day, there wasn't a drop on him. It was just as white as this is right now. He was a great guy. He was from Sicily. And he loved the gals, of course. Of course, he loved the gals. And so he liked to talk about that a lot, and growing up in Sicily. And Giacomo Spada was the head chef, and he was a ruler, but he was a wonderful guy.
How long did you stay there?
2 years.
And then where'd you go?
I went to a restaurant called La Gauloise, which was like the first bistro in New York. And it was owned by a couple of French guys. And I went there to work with this guy named Christian because he was out of sight. And so I went to go work at La Gauloise. And then I was back in the French food,
And then in what capacity?
Slave. Night saute guy, night saucier. Yeah, it was nice.
When did you move beyond slave?
I'm still a slave, right? Just like you are.
Yeah.
At the Carlyle Hotel. I became the sous chef at the Carlyle Hotel.
And the Carlyle Hotel is very famous because that was where Bobby Short held court.
Bobby Short played in the Bebbleman Bar every night. Yeah, and it was famous because famous for things that happened and no one will ever know because it happened at the Carlyle.
Yeah, Brooke Shields is currently playing there now.
Good for her. That's a good spot.
Yeah, it's a very, very prestige spot.
It's the best. It's the best hotel in the world.
So
that's what it is.
So where did you have a run-in with a former first lady?
Which one?
Oh,
Jackie Onassis.
Yeah,
that was with the Carlyle. Would that happen at the Carlyle?
No. I was in school. I have a friend. His name is David Waltuck. David Waltuck's one of the best chefs at any place. He had a restaurant called Chanterelle in New York City, which was a 4-star place. It was Michelin star, rated. It was the best place. When we met in school, and David was a guy from the Bronx, and he was connected to all of these gay art guys. Really cool guys. David was David was a guy like Jim Bodwin in high school. David would take me home on the weekends, which was really nice because I got to see what New York was like from a New Yorker. David was a nice Jewish boy from the Grand Concourse and Marshallville Parkway up there.
I grew up right near there.
Right there.
Right there.
And I used to go and spend the weekends with his family, his mother and his father, and his Aunt Gertie and Aunt Fanny that lived across. And David showed me Manhattan. And he knew these guys. Billy Katz was one of the guys, and Willie, I can't remember Willie's last name. These were like these really cool arty guys, you know. And so to make a short story long, Billy Katz gets in touch with David, and he says, "Look, they want to tear down the old police station in Little Italy. It was a beautiful building." And they said, "You know, we have this momentum. We want to save it." And they did eventually. And so they had an event to thank the people that helped. And Billy asked David, we were students, if he would do the food. So he said, sure. And we stuffed pigs. We did wild stuff, you know, we did incredible stuff. There was this guy named Gennaro Lombardi. He owned a restaurant in Little Italy called Lombardi's. It was in his family for years. And he let us, he was one of these people that were involved in saving the building, you know, because it was in the neighborhood. So his involvement was he had espresso at the place and some guys to serve it. And he let us use his kitchen, which was very, very generous. We stayed up all night. We made all of this food. So the next day, we stayed up all night. We made these pigs. We made stuffed fish. We made omelet cakes, and we did all kinds of stuff. So we move it over to the venue, which was in the building that they were saving. And they had this upstairs. It was this huge built room, big room. You could throw footballs in it, you know. It was huge. Go long, you know, big room. So we have the tables. We're setting up the tables. We have a table up front here, and then one behind us, and we have the pigs on it. We got the pigs in the back, and I'm fixing everything with the, you know, the watercress and making it look nice. And behind us is this big sign that says E-A-T, eat. It would light up, E-A-T, eat. And it was a piece by Robert Indiana, who was the guy that did Love. You know, I mean,
wow, yeah.
You know, these famous artists. So they're about to open the doors and let these people come in. Andy Warhol did the invitations to this. You know, This was like a really connected group.
Right.
So I'm looking at the pigs and I'm fixing it and everything's fine. And then I'm fixing my apron and I got a little hat on and I look across and way over there, I see Billy Katz come out of this door. And Billy Katz was hard to miss because he's like 6'6", and he's with this woman. And they're way over there. And I see him, and I'm tying my apron and looking, and everything's fine. And he waves, and he's walking towards me. And I see this woman he's with, and I'm thinking, she looks really familiar. How do I know this lady? And then she gets a little closer, and I think, do I know her from New Orleans? You know how you always think, you know, somebody from New Orleans. So finally, they get right up here. And Billy says, oh, Andy, look, everything's fantastic. Y'all did such a great job. It's so beautiful. I said, thanks, Billy. He says, I'd like to introduce you to my friend Jackie Onassis. And I thought, oh, that's how I know.
Wow.
How was she?
She was very nice. She shook my hand and said how nice everything was, and then she disappeared. I've never seen her since.
She don't write, she don't call.
Then they opened up the doors, and like 500 people came in.
Wow.
It was just, it was incredible.
That's great. So you moved out here in 88? 86. And then you've been out here ever since. What would you say are your main things that you like to fix? What kind of food do you like to fix the most?
I like cooking fish, because I like to eat fish. But I cook every week, I mean, I was cooking before I came here. I cook everything. I left New Orleans. I knew what that was, and I had to get out. So I went to New York, and I learned a lot in New York. I worked in French joints. I worked in Italian places. I worked at, if you're going to work in a hotel, the Carlyle would be a good hotel to work
Sure.
at.
Yeah.
We had goldware.
Goldware.
Not silverware, goldware.
If you wanted it, we had it, The election, the Carter was running for the presidency. Reagan was running for the presidency. And there was another guy named John Anderson.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
He stayed at the Carlyle. I said, I'd never vote for this guy. He's staying at the Carlyle. Jimmy Carter's staying at the Motel 6. This guy was staying at the Carlyle. I said, the audacity of this guy,
The Carlyle was noted for his trice, right? All kinds of romantic involved in the. Did Bobby Kennedy have a deal with the Marilyn Monroe there and the back door?
Everybody over there. You kidding me? It was.
My lips are sealed.
We had one of the best things about,
if only his lips could talk.
when the Carlyle was a totally cool place to work.
Wow.
Because it's a secret place. And not only is it a hotel, but it's a residency hotel.
Right.
People live there. And they have probably one of the most important aspects of their food service is room service. And the room service is incredible. First of all, I mean, this is a long time ago, right? And I'm sure it didn't change much, except people have died and they've been replaced by others that were similar to them. But the room service was run by these two Irish guys, older Irish guys. And they were in this little room with glass around it so that they could look out. And they answered phones all day long. They wrote stuff down. And then they would come see us. Can you do this? Can you do this? Jimmy Cagney calls. Can you make a Welsh rarebit? What's that? Yeah, we can make a Welsh rarebit. Who's going to call? Everybody's going to call. One time I got a phone, room service comes. We have a request. We have a guest upstairs, and they've just returned from Maine. And they have oodles of lobsters, and they don't know what to do with them. What can we do? I said, well, let's get them. I said, we'll make some, lobster Americana, lobster fra Diablo. I said, and lobster bisque, and then we'll boil up the rest of them and keep them for them because they can't eat all of these. It was just two people. Oh, would you go up to the room? I said, of course I'll go to the room. It wasn't a question, So you got to put on the clean shirt, the clean jacket, and put the hat on. And you got to go up with the room service waiter, right? Knock on the door. Cheryl Tiggs answered the door in a bathrobe. Oh, my heavens, come on in, she says. I'm going to show you my lobster in a second, baby. You never know what's going to happen.
Great stuff.
You never know what's going to happen.
In 1988, I made a couple of trips to Russia.
Oh, are you kidding me?
And I came back with so much fucking caviar that could choke a horse. And I called my friend, Chef Eddie Herbert.
What did we do?
Oh, you made a fabulous feast out of caviar. You made lobster with caviar, and you made something else with caviar. You used caviar in 6 different courses. It was fabulous. And you don't even remember.
I don't even remember that.
Well, thank you.
But I think about that trip almost every day because when they went to Russia, it was Russia. It was the USSR. And Frank went over there with a bunch of people, including Mike Tyson.
Mhm.
And he came back, and you brought me a bust of Lenin, and I have it. It's stuck in a Schefflera plant and on my patio. I think of you every day when I see him.
Well, over there at that time, they had so much caviar that they would just give it to you.
That's why they don't have any more.
Yeah, well, who knows why they don't have any more? Of course, free enterprise took over, and that's why they don't have any
The
more.
pirates took over.
Yeah,
The
pirates. But I mean, we were getting jars
Unbelievable.
of it red, and I really don't like it, but
It's delicious.
you turned it into a magnificent feast.
Well,
I wish you could remember it. I wish you could remember what you did.
Me too.
Caviar, I don't know. Caviar to me is like anchovies. You really got to
That's
really
good.
develop a taste.
That's
for it.
good. It's
Yeah.
good stuff.
Anchovy smelts. There was a lot of smelts in Spain.
That's a good little fish to eat in Greece too. Yeah, they fry them up and eat them. They're delicious.
You know who used to eat them? Our friend Marty Nedboy.
I bet he did.
He ate them in droves.
You know, when I lived in New York City, I lived on Morton and Hudson Street, which is in the West Village.
Mhm.
And in order for me to get to the subway, I had to walk across Bleecker Street. And on Bleecker Street, there was Otto Manelli's Meat Market, Zito's Bakery, Greenwich Village Fish. They had all of these sausage places and stuff. It was just a wonderful, wonderful place, you know. And what the hell am I talking about?
You're going somewhere that
Just living in New York City. You started working down there?
No, but this was going in a direction which, of course, I got lost. I'm
That's
sorry.
that could happen to the Pope. No big deal.
we came off of making something with caviar. Not well. Okay, so let me segue. What goes into making a good roux? I hear that in New Orleans food, a good roux is at the basis of everything. What is a good roux?
A roux is fat and flour, and you cook it together to thicken things, like gumbo, for instance.
Mm-hmm.
So if you were to make a gumbo, like I did, let's whip it out.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing this gumbo.
There's a in New Orleans, people always say this. First, you make a roux,
Right.
and it goes with a lot of things. And you make the roux. It's with some kind of a fat, oil and flour, or butter and flour, lard and flour, and you cook it.
Everybody makes it different.
Yeah, yeah, sure, yes, but similar. Some people do it fast, some people do it slow. But gumbo, you make a roux very, very dark. That's why it's a dark soup. But others, you make a roux, a blonde roux, which is white, that you would thicken a bechamel with, a white sauce. You make a noisette, light brown, to thicken maybe a chicken stock to make a chicken sauce. So a roux is a thickening agent.
Okay.
That is used extensively in New Orleans and everywhere. Italians make roux. Everybody makes roux.
So,
but we exaggerate roux.
Billy, are you familiar with roux?
Yeah, I mean, I'm familiar with them. Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing they'll tell you in New Orleans. You got to have the roux. You got to have the roux. But
I'll put everything in here. Usually, when you make gumbo, you put the gumbo in the bowl, and then you put some rice on top of it. I saved you a step. I'll put it all in there.
Thank you.
But in this is andouille sausage, and there's a guy that I get it from, and he makes the good stuff. So this is the good stuff, and there's chicken and there's shrimp in here, and there's roux, and there's a stock that is made. First, I poach the chickens and take it out. And then I take the shrimp shells and put that in there. So it's a combination stock. You're going to like this.
Oh, I'm going to love it.
Wow. Now, your friend here
Keep talking.
I'm loving life. I'm looking at this thing. I'm thinking,
Your friend here, your partner in crime over here, he can't help it. He's Italian. And one of his thank heavens. And one of his favorite things in the whole wide world to eat
is
pasta fazool.
pasta fazool, pasta fagioli, pasta fazool. That was one of the questions I was going to ask you when you said that Romeo Salta was the first guy to elevate Italian food. I said, most good Italian food is peasant food, like pasta fazool and cheech and pasta. And how do you elevate it? I mean, the presentation? Or?
It was a Northern Italian place, which meant that we sold a lot of veal. And there was stuff, of course, there was tomato sauce, but it was a Northern Italian-based restaurant. We sold 2 legs of veal a day. Giacomo would butcher a leg of veal in the morning, and in the afternoon, the evening chef, Giovanni Acquaviva.
You sure he was Italian?
Giovanni Acquaviva would come up, because everything was in the basement, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd come up with a leg of veal on his shoulder. Buonasera, sera, buonasera. And he'd throw it down, boom, and take it apart. Everything at that place, we did it to order. If you wanted a steak, they cut the, you know, they cut it. They cut it. Liver, you know, how do you want it? It was a great place. I'd work lunch, and then I was a slave. They'd send me to the basement where I would keep the restaurant in chopped garlic.
Wow.
Wow.
Keep the restaurant in chopped parsley, keep the restaurant in breadcrumbs, clean the clams, clean the oysters, peel the shrimp, do this, do that, cut the minestrone, cut it, deep.
Prep.
And then later, I'd have a little break, and I could go, and I'd go back to the Vanderbilt YMCA and lay down for like a couple of hours and then come back.
So how many times did you say yes, chef, in your life?
Lots, all the time. You know,
What?
I don't, like yes, chef, yes, chef, yes, chef. We didn't do all that. You don't have time for all that. That's that's TV.
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell that is. But a lot of stuff you see now, I ain't got no tattoos.
Celebrity
I don't know
chef.
what that is. I don't know what all that is. It's something else.
I got a couple questions about that. Anthony Bourdain.
He's dead.
Yeah, he is.
He's still dead? Still?
You like him?
You know what? He killed himself, poor bastard. So he was in pain all the time, and he hit it well. But what I will say is, he invented himself the greatest job in the whole wide world.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
He had the greatest job in the world. Smoking and drinking and eating everything in sight everywhere. Where we going next? But I'm sure it was a whole lot of work, because he was working the whole time. It was work. You have to write all that stuff and think about all that stuff. I liked him.
Yeah.
I don't like watching it,
Oh, okay.
I guess, it's guy killed himself,
Any celebrity chef that you do like?
My best friend in the world is a guy named Frank Brightson. He is a chef in New Orleans. He's very, famous guy. I gave him his first job ever at a Blimpie's base. Tony Khan.
Tony Kanza's Blimpie. We've got a friend named Tony Kanza who started Blimpie's when he was I think in high school.
Whoa.
It was. I don't know what happened. Yeah. That's the day I met you. Tony Kanza was there too. We met in that restaurant, and it was Tony and you and Karen and Jay. And Jay had a date. I don't know who she was. And Tony might have had a date. I don't know. But that was the night I met you.
Yeah.
And then Tony Conza, Jay introduced me. This is my friend Tony Conza. He owns Blimpie. He owns all the Blimpie Bases. And I looked at him and I said, "I know you. I was the night manager of Blimpie Base in Baton Rouge, Louisiana." You know?
And Tony Conza started in high school wrapping sandwiches, and he just made them and wrapped them, and
Wow.
it developed an empire out of making and wrapping sandwiches.
Blimpies.
He was on the cover of like Restaurant News, the big restaurant publication. And it's a picture of Tony Conza, an article about Tony Conza. Blimpies all over the world. And they asked him, "Tony, if you could have a perfect restaurant, what would it be?" And he said, "It would be a drive-up window where a robot took your order, made the sandwich, and handed it to you."
Wow.
Businessman, business.
Yep.
I got a question about being a chef and regarding Michelin star. So, what do you think about that system, the Michelin star system? Do you think restaurants deserve it? Do you like the system?
It's hard. Yes, it's hard. It's hard to get 1 star, and then after you get a star, now you're in big trouble because you have to keep it, and they're going to come back. And when they come back, they want to see changes. So you got to paint your place. You got to change the silver. You got to do all kinds of changes. You know, it's difficult. It's very difficult.
Hard work.
And then some guys, you know, it's happened. A chef will go from 3 stars to 2 stars.
Nobody want to go there anymore.
And he'll kill himself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Wow.
it's crazy.
I don't know. My friend David was Michelin rated. 3 stars. It's all you can get. And he worked hard every day.
But working hard means, excuse me, being up at 6 a.m. and going to the fish market to pick out.
I'll get somebody to do it for you.
Yeah. But until you can, you've got to do it yourself.
Uh-huh.
And then you're up at 6 a.m. and you're closing the place at midnight.
Uh-huh.
And then next day, it's back at
And
it.
then you go out and drink after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got to shut it down, right? You can't. You're too hyped up. You got to have at least 2 hours of shutting it down. And that's easy to do in New Orleans because the bars there are always open.
You've been thrown out of a few bars in New Orleans, haven't you?
No, I was a good drunk. I was a friendly drunk. People, I slept a lot. You know, I passed out a lot at the bar, but they didn't throw me out.
Man, I
so
can't believe you worked at Johnny White's. That's
I worked at
that's
Johnny's for a while.
fantastic.
I had a
man.
great time at Johnny's. I love Johnny White's.
They didn't have a lock on the door.
Yeah.
You know what I
There
mean?
was no
They
lock
stayed
on the
open
door.
during Katrina.
24 hours a day.
Yeah.
24 hours a day. And Johnny himself was a great guy. Johnny was a sweetheart. I tell you a quick story. I was sitting in a bar in the Bronx with a bunch of bartenders that I knew and a bunch of bar owners that I knew. We were just talking about the profession. I mean, one guy says from behind the bar, "You know, I tell you where I was. The worst bartender I ever saw in my life was during Mardi Gras in Johnny White's." He says, "I went to order a drink." He says, and the guy put 4 shots in front of me. He was starting to pour the drink, and obviously just passed out behind the bar. Out cold. Went down while he was pouring the whiskey. The whiskey went all over the place. I said, "That was my brother." I remember that incident. What happened was my brother was trying to work through Mardi Gras, and some guy walked in. He says, "You got anything? You know, keep me out. Like I've been partying for 3 days. I got a 10 bar. You got anything?" So the guy gave him 3 pills, and he just ate the pills. He didn't look at him, and the guy gave him downs instead of.
Gosh.
And he said he was starting to pour. Boom! He hit the deck. You know. Anyway, but Johnny's was a great joint. It was an old school joint, you know. Wow. But I got a.
It's a degenerate joint.
Yeah, right up my alley. I loved the place. It was a great joint. Great joint.
That was one of the good things about New Orleans is you can start out in like a classy place, you know, and then you move and then end up in a transsexual bar and then go to Johnny White's, you know.
It was all give me a Go Cup, give me a Go Cup, give me a Go Cup. It's the only place that I know of in the United States you can drink on the street, provided you got it in a cup. You don't want any glasses. But and you would think any other bar, like I was in the restaurant, well, the bar business more than the restaurant business, but I delved into the restaurant business. And if somebody walked in with a drink into your bar, you tell them, "What are you doing with that fucking thing? Get the fuck out of here. You can't come into a bar with a drink."
You can't do that.
But in New Orleans, you can walk in with a Go Cup, and it works for each other. It's like this joint's dead, we'll go up the block, and it's like, it's no problem, you know.
when I worked at Broussard's, if you walked in with a drink,
Yeah, they hang you. Yeah, you don't do that. You don't walk into a fucking restaurant with a hot dog. You just don't do that.
no, you don't do that.
So, what is your favorite
Meal?
food to eat in New Orleans, of New Orleans cuisine? Because I love jambalaya, I love etouffee, I love it all, and that gumbo looks amazing, by the way.
Crawfish etouffee is a special dish.
Yeah,
It's my favorite.
your favorite too, huh?
Yeah, of all time.
I love it. It's a great dish.
It's a really good dish. I was lucky in that my grandfather was Louisiana. Our motto is sportsman's paradise, and by that they mean hunting and fishing.
Exactly.
And my grandfather enjoyed living in sportsman's paradise. He was a Louisiana sportsman, and he had 2 daughters, my Aunt Dee and my mother. God bless them. Aunt Dee's 98, my mother's 95.
Cool.
So when my grandfather Nampy had grandsons, oh my heavens, we went hunting and fishing, and we always brought stuff home. And his wife, my grandmother, Mama Dia, she's the best cook that ever lived. And she could take all of that stuff that we brought home and make it into delectable things. By first making a roux and then serving it over some rice. We used to hunt dove a lot. We mostly hunted dove. And so you have to get a bunch of them to make a meal. And so we take all of the dove to Mama Dia's. And when she cooked them all, we'd get together and eat it. And it was pretty special stuff. Wow.
Any final questions, Derek?
Yeah, I got a couple more questions. You mentioned the Carlyle being the best hotel
in the world.
In the world. Why do you say that?
I think it's probably
because it's elegant. It's private.
Mm-hmm.
It's exclusive.
And it's probably listed as one of the best hotels in the world.
No, it is. There's a documentary out. I was just curious about it.
It's incredible.
Since none of us have worked there.
It's incredible. It was so much fun. And so the Irish guys ran
room service.
And it was just 2 guys.
Oh.
And that ran the room service. Now the waiters, the room service waiters, they wore these beautiful white linen with the bow tie, and the tables, the room service tables were on wheels, and it was covered in this very expensive Irish linen. All of the plates and all of the glassware, it was china and crystal. There was a long stem rose in the middle of they had these coffee pots that were special made that were silver, and they were glass lined, and you could put coffee in it today and put it on the shelf over here and come get it tomorrow, and steam would come out.
Wow.
Everything was incredible.
Top shelf.
It was incredible. Everything was incredible. And the Puerto Ricans ran the food up and down. And that was fun, because the Irish guys had handed ticket to the Puerto Rican guys, and who would start handing tickets out to the cooks and stuff, and there's banter going on. It was always a lot of fun. Now, catering. We did a lot of catering. People get married. Can you imagine getting married?
Wow.
And
special order meals.
That was unbelievable. But the rooms were fantastic, And the people that ran the catering, all the catering waiters and the catering captains, they were Greeks.
Huh.
Right?
Wow.
So you got the Irish guys over here. You got the Puerto Rican guys over here. And you got the Greek guys running the catering.
Must have been crazy.
And in the restaurant, it was French guys.
Wow.
Who were the maitre d' and the waiters, and then of course Puerto Ricans is busboys and stuff. It was a fun place to work.
A lot of broken English.
It was a fun place to work. It was a lot of fun.
You mentioned before about how this chef beat you up when you were just, you were
You
slave.
know,
I mean, beat you up.
yelled at you.
Yeah. But what is the deal with that, all chefs? I mean, they did like, it's like the captain of a ship. Like they get off like being like that because they're always screaming and yelling. And
you know what? I don't hang out with chefs because they have a tendency to be the assholes. You know, with all that yelling and screaming. I know that in the beginning, I yelled, but then you figure it out. You know, like, you know what? This no. So you figure it out, and then you don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
But like on TV, you see, I don't like to watch a lot of cooking shows because they're mean-spirited.
Yeah.
I'm in the hospitality industry.
Exactly.
You know, I'm not in the hostility industry. I'm in the hospitality industry. You come to me, I'm gonna make you happy. You know, for a couple hours.
Mm-hmm.
All of that yelling and screaming, and it's
Yeah.
Show business. That's show business.
Yeah, and I've seen a couple of them that are assholes. In a couple of them, you know, that I hired or whatever, and got, the guy thinks they're like dictators or some shit.
like it's art or something.
Yeah.
What?
You got any good corned beef and cabbage recipes?
Which isn't even Irish.
It's not even Irish.
It's
Exactly
not even
right.
Irish.
You couldn't be more right.
No.
They didn't have the money for corned beef in Ireland. The ham and cabbage, bacon and cabbage.
That's like an American thing.
It is. Corned beef. Nobody ever had money for corned beef in Ireland.
When I first, this was speaking of the Irish in New York and all that stuff. I just moved to New York. I'm living at the Vanderbilt YMCA, right?
$9 a room.
I started work. I started work at Romeo Salta's in like the second week of March. So the Vanderbilt YMCA is over here. The Romeo Salta's is over here. So in the morning, I walk over, I work. After I do my split, I walk back to the Vanderbilt, take a little nap, and walk back and walk back. It's my first week. I'm taking my break. I'm walking back to the Vanderbilt YMCA. All of a sudden, I come across Fifth Avenue, and there's like all of these people all over the place. There's a gigantic something going on. What is it? What's going on? What's all it is?
And he was leading the parade.
Freaking Irish, the St. Patrick's Day parade.
Patty's Day parade.
St. Patrick's Day parade. I went, man, and I'm trying to get across the street. And the policeman looks at me and says, what are you trying to do? I said, man, he brought me across the street, the guy. Yeah. Right.
Patty's Day
Billy
parade.
O'Connor
Never missed one.
Was leading the parade.
20 years I never missed one.
I got one of my best buddies, this guy, Philip McGrath. Mm-hmm. He's there with his cousins and everybody.
Kiss me, I'm Irish.
Everybody. Yeah.
So I got another question. Since we have a chef in the house, in the building, if you were to, what's the most important ingredient in cooking? If you had to have one ingredient, probably salt, I guess.
Love.
Perfect.
That's a good answer.
Okay, quick. I got a quick one for you. What do you put in your jambalaya? And you do it in 1 minute, like a jambalaya recipe for me. You got andouille sausage, right?
And sausage, chicken, and shrimp.
Chicken and shrimp. Okay, that's the deal.
And then I got one more.
And everybody makes it different.
Yeah.
And everybody's,
it's like a New Orleans stew, more or less.
Well,
Whatever you got hanging around, let's go.
That's more of a Cajun dish.
Yeah.
They got chickens in the yard. They caught some shrimp. They butchered the pig and made sausage. And they always have rice.
Yeah.
And what's in the yard growing? Bell peppers, green onions, garlic.
Yeah.
Is there a quintessential New Orleans dessert?
Bread pudding.
Bread pudding.
Bread pudding. Everybody eats bread pudding.
You put raisins in your bread pudding?
Put everything, whatever you want. Yeah. There's 1,000 different bread puddings. Bananas Foster.
Bananas Foster.
I love bananas Foster.
Delicious.
Love. He said
stuff.
love.
It's great stuff.
Wow, love.
We used to have to make it, table side. When you worked at Brennan's, I worked
That's a big breakfast joint.
Bro,
That's their deal, breakfast.
breakfast at Brennan's. People are waiting outside. The doors open at 7:00, and I worked upstairs, and they had this maitre d' guy upstairs. Buzzy was his name, and he wore like yellow suits and bow ties, and he was Buzzy. You know, he was.
I'm
fantastic.
sure he was.
He was fantastic. and so you had 4 tables. You were assigned 4 tables, and each table sat 4 people. And so you would stand at the top of the stairs next to Buzzy with 16 menus, and he would bring up 4 tables of 4 and set them down, and it's like shuffling cards. And after you got the last menu down, you went to the first person, and you'd say, "How about an eye opener? Brandy, milk punch, Bloody Marys." You know, people start drinking at 7:00 in the morning. It's New Orleans.
It's New Orleans.
You run to the bar, and at that time they had a mixologist in the basement, and you press the thing, and the drink came out, like the brandy milk punches and all that stuff. And then you brought in the drinks, and then you took everyone's order. So it was breakfast. They wanted omelets, they wanted eggs Benedict, they saw do all of that jazz, you know. So with it, they got an appetizer, which was some kind of, usually a soup or a baked apple. Who wants to eat a baked apple? A gumbo or oyster soup. So you went downstairs and you got that, and you came back upstairs, and then you ran back downstairs again to get their entrees while the busboy was busting the other stuff, and you run back upstairs. This is all upstairs and downstairs stuff. It's 16 things at a time. Throw it all out there, and then when the busboy is cleaning up, you run back downstairs again and get a bunch of bananas, and they had a big giant thing of brown sugar, you know. And everybody, all of the waiters had their own garidon, which are those carts with all your stuff on it. And on that was a bottle of banana liqueur, a bottle of rum, etc. So we run down, get the bananas and all this stuff. Or if you had strawberries roaming off, you get the strawberry. Or if you had cherry, and then you had to run back upstairs, and you got to do all of this, and everything's on fire, you know, and fabulous
Presentation. Presentation.
And then breakfast was over, and I'd be walking home, and it'd be like 1:00 in the afternoon. I have, you know, like a couple $100 in my pocket. It was fun.
Brennan's is the place for breakfast, no doubt about
You know
it.
what?
Always been the place for breakfast.
I was, yeah. The man that started it was Owen Brennan, and he had owned the Vauqueray, which I had once worked in. That was one of his first places, and then he had this idea that he was going to open up on Royal Street and open it up for breakfast, and everybody said, "You out of your mind." And the week before he was going to open it, he dropped dead.
Oh, wow.
He dropped dead. And his sister, Ella Brennan, you've heard of Ella Brennan from Commander's Palace?
Yeah.
She's the one. She took it over. You know, she had to. She was her brother's right-hand person. And it was Ella Brennan who ran the ship. And at some point, Owen's kids grew up to be old enough to get involved. And then, you know, whenever there's a lot of money involved, the family disintegrates. And it did. And so the older generation went uptown and opened up Commander's Palace. And the younger generation kept Brennan's.
Wow.
So time goes on, time goes on, time goes on.
Yeah. Well, we're never going to be able to disintegrate.
No.
Because we're never going to be rich enough to. But do you have any closing
No,
statement?
man, just
Oh, you're kicking me out?
I got another question.
Oh.
Yes. One dish that I have to learn to make before I die.
Cassoulet.
Cassoulet. Please do tell.
Yes.
Oh man, it takes 2 days. You know, takes
Wow.
2 days.
Cassoulet.
What's in it?
Yeah, give us a
10 seconds.
beans, duck, pork, lamb can be in it. It's one of these things. It's a winter dish, and it all goes in the fireplace on low, and cooks and cooks and cooks and cooks, and then when it comes out, it's one of those great things.
Simmers, everything goes
That's
together.
one of those great things.
So, Derek, for the next time, can you bring your cassoulet
Yes, I will.
recipe to us?
Yes, absolutely. I will do that.
Look it up, man. It's something, and if you like cooking, it would be something to. It's a project.
It's a project.
It's a project.
Well, one thing that hasn't been a project has been this podcast. Eddie, thank you so much.
Well, thanks for having me, man. It's
Terrific,
nice to
man.
meet you,
Oh, my
man.
pleasure, man.
Oh, Frank, it's always fun to be with you.
Really cool meeting you, man.
This
Really.
guy, Frank Pace, is the
Frank
greatest guy in the world.
The Godfather.
And Derek's nice to meet Derek also.
No,
Derek,
no,
nice to meet you, man.
it ain't nice meeting Derek.
No, it's not.
How did you end up in this group? You seem like a nice guy.
It's a long story.
It is a long story. It's been told before, but I coached his daughter in soccer.
Oh man,
He was one of the soccer parents.
Oh
One of the
man.
pain in the ass soccer parents.
Oh
Who
man.
actually wasn't a pain in the
I was
ass.
going to say, if I was a pain in the ass, we would not be friends.
Who actually wasn't a pain in the ass. He was one of the good ones.
That's why everybody gets into coaching, is because
Yes.
they see some man who's like yelling at their children.
Yeah. Well, anyway, thanks, Eddie. Thanks for the gumbo, for the pasta vazul. Thanks for everything.
I got for each of you.
Oh, great.
fantastic.
That's great.
Man. That's
Thank
fantastic.
you so much.
And thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, that's incredible.
Just bring it up to a simmer and eat. It might need a little salt. Who knows?
I doubt it. We can always.
This
add
was
salt.
fun, man. This was great.
I hope you had as much fun as we had having you.
Yeah, you were really cool. I mean, I was looking forward to meeting you, man. When he told me you got a chef from New Orleans, I said, and a friend of Jay Thomas, I said, all right, I got to meet this kid. It's going to be good.
So with that,
we'll say good night.
say good night, Derek.
Good night, Derek.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody. Thanks
See
for
you
listening
later.
in.
Next week's guest, umpire Joe West. Join us while we talk about baseball's Hall of Fame announcements.